And today we're going to talk about light and how light affects our inner and outer vision, our external and internal vision. And light is so important because it's connected to our eyes and the way images are translated through the visual cortex and into the brain as imagination. Think of what light means to you. What are synonyms for, quote, the light? Clarity, God, Creator, Heaven. Then there's just the physical light of the sun and the spiritual connotations to that, which are bringing that energy into our beings as food for our body, as light for our minds. There's many different ways you can look at this. And we can tap into our powers of clarity through the medium of light. And there's an interface between light and the human mind. And there's also an interfering frequency that we all have between light and the way the human brain processes, translates, and communicates that light. When this happens, our experience of the world is changed, seemingly off kilter. And you can think of it like people that live in Seattle talk about how it is to be in the gray, rainy weather and how they get depressed and the illusions and delusions that occur. It can happen here. It doesn't matter really if it's the physical light. It can be the emotional and the spiritual light that is blocked. Most humans live in a very narrow bandwidth of light waves, and because of this, we don't really see reality clearly. The right hemisphere of the brain is usually seen as the feminine side, and this is about lateral thinking, and it's the intuitive and artistic part of the brain. It doesn't see patterns and facts through numbers and languages like the left side. It sees reality differently through fractal images that emerge from the deep recesses of the brain. But without the full functioning of this side of the brain, our perception of reality is very limited. And you can read lots of books about the left and right side of the brain. I'm kind of going to a different level. When we see the world in a limited way, we see life through a certain set of parameters, boundaries, borders, which create many times a field of fear within human beings. Images that flood our brain don't make much sense and don't seem to be able to be controlled. In most cases, they emerge as secret fantasies, repressed dreams, emotional issues, and hidden agendas. What happens then is that the left side of the brain, or the more male-oriented side, becomes dominant, using logic as a means of controlling your reality. So, when we fantasize without finding a healthy and creative outlet for these fantasies, we're repressing the fear and creating a drain on our bodies and our spirits. This also blocks us from following our true identity, which is hidden behind these fantasies. The longer we hold them, the more twisted that they can become, until what was once a simple archetype becomes perverted into a much darker form. Then we must own responsibility for this form before we can release the creative power within us. We then project this thinking out into the world. And in the middle of this world sits the separate self, a controlled illusion, continuously manipulating you through the medium of sight and sound, meaning you only see and hear what you want to see and hear based on the illusion. You'll also see that your outer world mirrors this inner world. And another word for this inner construct or separate self is called the ego. And the ego, you have heard many different descriptions about them, but it's definitely a figment of our collective conditioning. And as much as our conditioning can be reconditioned, reprogrammed, the ego can gradually be shifted, softened, or dissolved. And as you all know, it's a slow and delicate process. and we've been discussing this over the last year on all these different shows. All the images that flood us from our unconscious represent archetypes. There are thrilling archetypes and archetypes that terrify us. We see these in movies, television programs and stories. And we can't escape them because they're projections of our psyche. The power of an archetype is that it creates a physical response in your body. Like when you watch a movie and you're just watching the movie, and let's say it's, like the guy finds the girl and they become happy, and you have these emotions of love that make you cry. These are things that you can't really stop. We try to avoid the archetypes that cause the greatest fear, but we can't. They eventually seem to even stalk us, and we keep recreating scenarios that we hate. And often the archetype can be our partner. That's part of this recreation of scenarios. If we could trust the positive images in our dreams and allow them to incubate in our imaginations, we'd begin to emerge from the false dreams we're in. To awaken from this state is amazing. You'll step out of the illusion of the rest of the world and begin to walk a new path that is not of the majority. It is the step that we all must one day take. Once you do this, once you let all the light that has been trying to be observed come in, that has been trying to penetrate, the dream you've hidden from yourself will awaken and show you boundless horizons. Another way that we seem to work with these fantasies that I spoke about earlier is through denial and anger. And this turns these negative fantasies into outer projections. So we're putting them out into the world. We have so much energy working with them. If we could own this fear and embrace the anger that we're feeling, these positive archetypes within us could manifest in the world. Because once you feel the negative, once you own that and just allow and accept it, you release the energy of that projection. This happens because of the inner denial of who you really are. Once you let go of this inner image, you can let go of disappointment and ultimately the possibility of breaking down in the future. The true dream of who you really are is what needs to be uncovered. This takes bringing in the light more fully, physically and spiritually. The more you play with the unlimited and creative concepts of the right hemisphere of that feminine, which is the creative part of you, the more healthy you and the world will become. We have imagery that's trapped in our brains because of our ancestors and our memories. These aren't just personal memories, but memories from the collective that have been repressed for eons. These memories exist within us as archetypes. When we begin to work consciously with these archetypes, with these fantasies, we begin to create our ideals of what we really want. We begin to work with our own dreams of who we are and what we can create. When we let go of identifying with the archetypes and see that they are showing us aspects of ourselves, and if we stay in the present, then we can really work with our dreams and shift our reality.